Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Welcome, one and all, to Monday Football Monday here on the SB Nation NFL show. It is the first Monday in April, not the day of fools. Today is Monday, April 3rd, 2023. Already out of breath. We've been running to get off the ground here. If you want to watch our show, you can subscribe to the SB Nation NFL show on our YouTube channel. You can watch us there. Of course, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a rating, write a review. Those things help us out. Before we get going, a reminder that this show is brought to you by our friends at DraftKings. DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today and use code SBNFL for a special offer when you sign up. That is code SBNFL only at DraftKings Sportsbook. My name is RJ Ochoa from SB Nation's Blog on the Boys, home of America's team. The fantastic Rachelle Prevet is on the ones and twos behind the glass. She will hand out, as always, the MF Double MVP that we are all vying for. With me, we finally have the whole crew once again in under the same roof. Let's get to Jeremy first from SB Nation's Pride of Detroit. Jeremy, your Detroit Tigers taking on my Houston Astros today. I'm dressed appropriately for the occasion. You are not. I thought you were going to come. Is it what's the Old English D? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, calling them my Detroit Tigers, I've already disowned the 2023 Detroit Tigers with their 0-3 start. Once they get it together, I will fully admit I am a bandwagon Detroit Tigers fan and really a bandwagon baseball fan in general. Catch me in October and maybe I'll talk about it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Comerica Park just exists to be something you pass on the way to Ford Field.
Really. Eye candy.
Exactly. You mentioned being a bandwagon fan. The king of bandwagons, Pete Sweeney from SB Nation's Arrowhead Pride. Nobody knows who Pete actually roots for when it comes to teams. And nobody knows anything Pete actually likes. Pete is an enigma in that sense. Pete Sweeney, happy Monday. Welcome back. We know you were under the weather last week, so it's great to see you live and live in color.
Here's my baseball take for the morning. This clock, it's going to save baseball. It has created just a way better game. I went to opening day the other day.
You got a bobblehead. You posted on your Instagram story.
I did. A Witt. Was
right behind you. You could have reached up and grabbed it. Yeah, there you go.
Bobby Witt Jr., which I thought was a big mistake. They could have written bobblehead Witt Jr. or something like that. They didn't. They just chose to write Bobby Witt Jr. But anyway, to get to the main point here, the Royals are also 0-3, which is sad. That you always just hope that the Royals are relevant in June here in Kansas City, which never happens. But what I will tell you about opening day is amazing. The clock is amazing. It's going to save baseball. It has created a much more interesting game. It actually, if you're really thinking about it, with the 20-second clock, it actually is having action, if you want to consider pitch in action, more often than football. I really think it needed to be done probably 10 years ago. Hopefully it's not too late, but I think it's really going to help baseball.
That's a great point. If you consider the 40-second play clock, sometimes it gets fully and totally used in the NFL versus baseball's pitch clock is obviously much shorter than that. Look at that. Pete coming in with some fastballs, I guess, to keep things pro. We had a whole show in line last week that we were going to get to. We did not get to it because Jeremy, as we were getting ready to start, news of Lamar Jackson wanting or having previously wanted a trade came out. We kind of made that the Lamar episode. I hope Rachelle is in better spirits than she was when we had that conversation, because it was a bit sensitive for her and her Baltimore Ravens fandom. So what we had done, just to kind of pull the curtain back, we had, between the three of us, each laid out three questions we still have at this point in free agency. One of them was Lamar related. That is yours, Pete. So you get the lowest hanging fruit on today's episode. I suppose we can swoop in and touch on that. Rachelle will come in and provide the 10th for a cherry on top at the very end of things. So let's go, Pete. Let's get your Lamar one out of the way. Your Lamar Jackson question that you still have at this point in free agency. Once again, today, April 3rd, we have about 3 weeks and change to go until the NFL draft.
Talk about being serendipitous and enigma. I had this question written down before the Lamar Jackson news broke, so we just knew that we had
requested the trade though before that. According to him, it was March 2nd. So
who knows? A little he said there. But who does Lamar Jackson take his first snap for next season? As much as you love to see messy storylines in the NFL because it makes it more interesting. I highly doubt Lamar Jackson is going to sit out a year, right? So he's going to be taking a snap for somebody. And so my question was, who will it be for? And I turn to you guys.
Well, again, Jeremy and I did a whole episode on this last week.
So this is a sensitive topic because my list very much differed from Mark Schofield's, and I got admonished for it for about 20 minutes.
Yeah, Mark had a list that we talked about, Pete, that he wrote for SBNation.com. Number one, I've already forgotten who number one
Falcons,
was.
right?
It was the Falcons. The Colts have kind of become the hot team to connect him to. I think we all kind of settled on the Commanders. I think I've cooled on that. I don't know, Jeremy. Like I'm kind of willing to buy the Lamar to Indianapolis stock. I don't know if you're on the same page there after everything from the owners' meetings.
I think the longer that this rolls on and nothing seems to be materializing, I think I'm starting to believe that maybe Baltimore is the right answer here, honestly. And I was actually just talking to Rachel about what Pete was just talking about, him potentially sitting out the season. I think we both agreed probably not going to happen. And so, I mean, obviously, once we get closer to deadlines, whether it's the NFL draft or training camp or OTAs, all that sort of stuff, that's when movement could potentially happen. There's no real urgency right now. But it just draws out longer, and there's not really a lot of smoke anywhere. I kind of think maybe Baltimore is kind of leading in the clubhouse right now. And I know that might sound crazy given where we've been they've had 2 years to resolve this and haven't really made a lot of progress. So I don't know. The Ravens have all of the kind of all the leverage with the franchise tag and everything. So that's kind of where I'm starting to lean now.
Yeah, I'm kind of with both of you, Jeremy, in that I kind of think Baltimore makes the most sense for everybody involved. Pete, I'm with you in that I love drama in the NFL or in sports in general, but I'm kind of past the point of I remember I don't even know who the first one was, but the first time the idea of a player not playing a season was so tantalizing and so juicy and so interesting. And now it's kind of whatever. Like we talked about baseball a little while ago, but I'm a San Antonio Spurs fan. It was miserable when Kawhi Leonard didn't play for the Spurs, and I hated every part of that. And it was so frustrating and annoying. And so I imagine Ravens fans feel the same way. Lamar not playing out of, I don't want to call it protest, but out of contractual disagreements, it would feel like such a flat, part of this story. We want some sort of resolution. It would feel like the season finale to a show where it's nothing happened. It's we have to wait 5 more months for this. Nobody's we're just going to forget about this. Who cares? So I'll go with Baltimore. Do you agree with our assessment, Pete, that the Ravens are the ultimate answer?
I think they're the safest pick, right? I think if we were making some fake odds for this thing, they would be minus money and probably not worth betting, but as far as the value goes, I think if you were, again, hypothetically betting on this, Indianapolis feels like something to take a risk on, because I think if it's going to happen with another team, your owner has to have the quality of a little wacky to maybe figure out how to get it done. And I think of those teams that we mentioned, Indianapolis has a little wacky owner, and maybe there is something that can, where, he kind of goes against the grain and tries to rip Lamar away. So I'd say the Baltimore Ravens or the Baltimore Colts, but I'll favor the Ravens.
Okay, we made that joke last week too, so good job. Jeremy, you're up. Your first question that you still kind of feel is a little unanswered, the thread that you want to pull at this morning.
Well, let's finish out the quarterback drama of the offseason, and that way we can talk about anything else the rest of the way. But Aaron Rodgers, obviously, that still has not been traded. So my question is twofold. Who is going to blink first in that negotiation, and what is ultimately going to be the price to acquire Aaron Rodgers?
I think the Jets blink first, because they're the person who needs the thing, right? If this is a supply and demand sort of sequence, they need the thing that the Packers have, that Aaron Rodgers has. And so if we lay out who needs what, who has what, the Jets have nothing, except for the draft capital, obviously, and they need Aaron Rodgers. And so, the Packers are kind of used to this, right? Off-season drama with Aaron Rodgers. Whoa, oh no, we have to deal with that again. What a complete set of foreign circumstances that we have no idea how to navigate. And so I think, when we get close to Pete's precious pitch clock here related to the NFL draft, when the Jets are on the clock and that pick is reaching an actual true and total expiration date, I think they blink. And I think it involves to cast a wide net, some sort of compensation on day 1 and 2. I don't know if that's specifically a first round pick, but we're not going to get to Saturday without Aaron Rodgers being a member of the Jets, in my mind, at least.
Yeah, I think it has to happen ahead of the draft. I think that's what the Packers are probably making their deadline. We have to get this done. And I think the Jets don't want a situation where the Packers say, all right, no, and then you're going into the draft, and then it's going to be a mystery as to what you even can send, because maybe the Packers don't like those particular players. So it does feel like it'll be resolved before the draft. And I think you're right to say the Jets. And really, in the grand scheme of the offseason, when you're working with a new quarterback, you don't even want to risk him not being there for certain offseason workouts. I imagine, and maybe this is a big assumption of mine, that Aaron Rodgers is not going to pull the, I'm Aaron Rodgers, I don't need to do the offseason program with a new team. And so I just think at a certain point, the Jets are going to say, look, everything's out there. Maybe Aaron hurt us a little bit by just blatantly saying we're the only team he'll play for. But it is what it is. We got to get this guy in the building. He's got to be wearing a different shade of green, a little, sooner rather than later, Jeremy.
Yeah, it's interesting because last week we talked about the Jets potentially using someone like Lamar Jackson as maybe a way to drum up, a lower price from the Packers. But that they showed that they're not interested in playing games here. I almost feel like this isn't as much of a stalemate as fans and media are necessarily making it out to be. I think both teams have a good relationship. Saleh and LaFleur are good friends. I just don't think there's that much bad blood here. And so I think it's eventually just going, I don't even know, even though I posed the question, who will blink first? I don't even know if that's actually really what's happening here. I think it's just, they're working out negotiations here. It'll probably be either, a trade, like you said, with first and second round picks being exchanged, or it'll be a second round pick and maybe a little bit more on top of that. So I'm with you guys. I think this probably gets done in the next week or two, honestly. Hopefully hopefully on draft night, because that adds a lot more fun and a lot more drama. But I have to imagine. Yeah, exactly. Little drama.
Good word.
Everyone loves a little bit of that, right? We got the AJ Brown trade on draft night last year. It seemed to come out of nowhere. This one won't carry that much shock, but I would love to see some sort of fireworks on draft night when one of those teams are on the clock.
That segues me into one of my questions. I was planning on waiting on this one, but good job by you, Jeremy. And we don't want to go on forever and ever here. My first question then will be, who was the surprise player to get dealt around the draft like AJ Brown? I don't think Aaron Rodgers would qualify just because, we kind of figure that's going to be the case. I have the appropriate answer, but I'm curious who each of you think is the player that gets traded, that gets dealt for, that gets whatever for. And again, it doesn't have to be during the draft the way the AJ Brown thing was, but just the kind of big time NFL name that finds a new home once those resources start to reach that proverbial expiration date. Pete, you're first.
I'm going to, Jeremy, if you have one at the tip of your tongue, I want to take some time to think about this for a second.
You were first, but whatever, you're running. Cowardly move. Jeremy?
That's fine. The one, and this wouldn't be like a complete shock because there has been some rumblings. There's been a little bit of smoke, but Ed Oliver to me is maybe one of the guys that might be on the move with the Bills. He's kind of, I think he's done the typical social media drama stuff where you're deleting everything that relates to the Bills or any sort of that. And I think he was posting clips of sacking up all NFC North quarterbacks and dropping hints. So, he's facing a contract extension and the Bills have been pretty stingy with their money this offseason, which I know we might get into a little bit later as well. But he's, first round talent, maybe didn't quite live up to expectation, but still a really good football player, really young football player. And there are plenty of teams that want to buff up on the interior of the defensive line, and he's a guy that could do it right away.
I put my mind into the air here, if you will, and I think because of all the smoke and because of how the draft goes, I think maybe DeAndre Hopkins gets moved ahead. I think and this goes to our first point about Lamar and Aaron Rodgers. I think deadlines drive deals in a lot of ways, and there's the whole money thing, and I know that has to be worked out. But right now there isn't a rush for teams to do it. Now, when you get to the NFL draft and maybe you don't believe in a certain receiver, I know that there are a few receivers that teams are interested in. Maybe it finally gets done where you say, let's go into the draft and have that shored up. And so maybe it's not exactly right, during draft night, but maybe right leading up to the draft where a team makes a move and knows what they have going in.
The Hopkins thing makes sense. I haven't listened to this myself, so I don't want to aggregate it poorly. But I saw that there was some chatter that Albert Breer of the MMQB of SI said on a podcast that the Cardinals may just wind up cutting DeAndre Hopkins. So we'll see. Again, I haven't verified that myself, but obviously he's been in an interesting spot. The Ed Oliver one is interesting. Jeremy, certainly, again, when you're entering the contract year for a player that you don't necessarily feel like you're going to pay, you do kind of want to get out early and make sure you get something. That is the spirit of one of mine. I have two. I did more work than either of you here. No big deal. The first one, does anybody remember first? Well, I'll say this, but I'm going back to the Titans. Well, it was obviously Tennessee who traded AJ Brown. Derrick Henry. We've heard a lot of chatter that they may move him, they may whatever. Maybe there's a team who is really hoping. The Chargers have been connected to Bijan Robinson as one example. Austin Eckler, for that matter. I mean, these are names, and this is the last kind of time to strike during the draft for the compensation to bring in some sort of replacements for them. That's what I was going to ask. Does anybody remember who the Titans took with the pick that they acquired in the AJ Brown trade?
Oof, no.
It was Treylon Burks, the receiver out of Arkansas. So the thought is kind of Indiana Jones idol swapping, right? Like one player for another. And Treylon Burks didn't necessarily take off as a rookie. But maybe that's the thought. Maybe that.
Not exactly the digs for Justin Jefferson trade, huh?
Right. So, but that's the thought, right? Is if you're gonna move on from somebody, you want to replace them, and that's why you're doing it then, to utilize the resource that is the NFL draft. And to that point, another name that we've heard thrown out in trade chatter, and again, maybe this is contingent upon the board is falling a certain way, so this team feels like, you know what, we can do it. We're entering a contract here for this player. Let's just get out now. Let's use this pick. Maybe Jackson Smith-Njigba, whoever's on the board. T. Higgins. We have heard T. Higgins' name thrown out a lot. The Bengals have said, we're not interested. Do they plan on paying T. Higgins as well as Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow? It would be, from a timeline perspective, very nice to line up a rookie contract for, again, whether it's a JSN or a Jordan Addison or a Quentin Johnston or whoever the case may be, to go with the big-time contracts that belong to Burrow and Chase. I think I killed this exercise. What do you think, Jeremy?
I think that makes sense. I mean, I feel like we talked about T. Higgins when the last time we were all together as maybe one of those guys that could be playing somewhere else next year.
When you go and sign your marquee left tackle, you only have so much money left to spend. You might have to move that receiver. So.
Jeremy, Pete is so offended that any team in the AFC would want to get good and not just bow down to Patrick Mahomes. It's so stupid that anybody would try to be competitive.
When you devote a certain amount of money to that left tackle position, other positions have to go by the wayside, and perhaps receiver is one of them.
All right, so I had Derrick Henry and T. Higgins. Jeremy, you had Ed Oliver. Pete, you had DeAndre Hopkins. I say we just back it up and then kind of like Missy Elliott thing. This thing, like put this thing down, flip it, and reverse it. So that means I'll go again with the question that I wanted to ask before Jeremy kind of made me go this direction. Look, I love the Cowboys, right? But I like a couple little teams. I like to keep my eyes on certain squads. The Lions, not for me, Jeremy. I have no beef or anything, but
wow,
they're a little too popular. You know what I mean? I don't want to be a part of the brigade. Certainly wish you all the success in the world. I would love to see the Packers dethroned and all that stuff. But I'm just not the person assigning my emotional ties to it. That's all I'm saying.
Media juggernaut Detroit Lions.
To your point, and Jeremy, you like to hear this because I think Lions fans really enjoy the come up, which has really been a couple of years running now. But
sure. The
Lions are officially out of the garage band, and they're in a local club right now.
Yeah,
right.
That's a great way to put it.
People are starting to hey, did you go see this band? And it's it's too late to be a Lions supporter right now, RJ.
I would go even further, Pete. They're playing Warped Tour. You know what I mean? It's man, I miss when I could go to the the local bar.
They're the 10th band in the Warped Tour. I mean, it's not high, right?
And that's what I'm saying. I don't want to go fight the crowd and be in the heat, and then I gotta pee and I gotta get through everything and use the port. No, I missed my normal bar. It was awesome. They had half price wells that night. It was a great scene, a great vibe. So they've just ballooned a little bit too far out of my league, Jeremy. Now to that point, my previous team that I had enjoyed in this way was the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, massive media darling. The Bills, I really felt like, and this does involve my Cowboys fandom, were the AFC's version of the Cowboys last year, and nobody wants to care. That really is a testament to how not media powerful the Bills are. That They completely withered in the playoffs, and nobody cared. Like, everybody's like, okay, cool. Like, you lost to the Bengals, fine. We'll just move on. We'll forget about you. Josh Allen had a million interceptions, and I felt like their issue offensively was very similar to Dallas's. Dallas had CeeDee Lamb and Tony Pollard on offense and no other explosive players to help. So what did they do? I'm not saying the Cowboys have won the Super Bowl, but they went out and traded for Brandon Cooks. Boom. All right, we've established the problem. We've identified it. We have taken measures to solve it. What have the Bills done? How have the Bills gotten better? Pete, you kind of like threw some, cold water on the Bengals for bringing in Orlando Brown Jr. That was addressing a serious issue, right? Like, that's been their bugaboo, is protecting Joe Burrow. What have the Bills done? And nobody cares. Nobody wants to talk about them. Nobody is criticizing the Bills for doing nothing in free agency. They're just sitting there, chilling, being idle. I don't understand it. And I am off the Bills bandwagon. I'm sorry. I cannot be in love with this team that doesn't want to win anymore.
I think the big moves came last year. That's what's tough about the Bills' identity at this stage. Everything was building toward last year, where you bring in Von Miller, wasn't able to play late in the season and in the playoffs, and you say to yourself, okay, we're going for it, right? We paid the premium for this pass rusher in his 30s, one of the greatest of all time, right? But he's getting up there, but we're going to give him a 6-year deal to get him in Buffalo. And you go to the playoffs, a weird ending. We never expected the ending to the season that happened with all the DeMar Hamlin stuff, but there was that build of like, this is the Bills' year, and they're gonna knock off the Chiefs, and we're gonna have this neutral game in Atlanta. We talked about it on here. It annoyed me, and then all of a sudden it was over, and it just seems like they've almost been relegated back to that cluster in the AFC, and what has really become these past 2 years a conference between the Chiefs and the Bengals.
That's it.
And I think right now too, and this was concerning for me, or would be concerning for me as a Bills fan. And I'm not trying to kill the Bills here. I know everyone knows I'm a Chiefs guy, but like when the GM comes out and starts listing excuses, and it has to do with, well, the salary cap, and the Bengals were bad for a few years, so they were able to combine Burrow with Chase. It's like, man, I know the rules are not perfect. We're not saying the NFL rules are perfect, but everyone is playing by mostly the same rules with the salary cap and everything that goes into it. And it's like, I don't know. I don't like, and I know this is a little bit of an intangible, I don't like the mojo that is surrounding this Buffalo Bills team, because it seems like this golden opportunity has passed them by.
Yeah, it does feel like they are sitting on their hands a little bit, but in terms of like the media perception, I think it's just that it's the Bills were this, franchise that, has struggled for years, can't win a Super Bowl. They're finally on the ascension. It's an awesome story. It's great. As a Lions fan, I relate to it. But then the Bengals just like took that spotlight right away from them and did the exact same thing. And now the Bengals are that team on the rise. And, there is a certain level of like, okay, once you get to the top, how do you stay at the top? And top is relative. All right. Don't get mad at me, Pete.
Right. You can be in the top without winning the Super Bowl.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
And so the Bills are finding out that it's not easy to stay there. And some of that is excuse making. Some of that is legit. Like, it's just, you can make runs. It's hard to maintain that level of you're always in the conversation. And the Bills, they're in the conversation. Let's not kid ourselves. But
yes,
in an elite AFC conference, they are definitely not second fiddle. Even they're third or fourth fiddle. And so it's an interesting power dynamic shift, because it feels like it happened while none of us was looking, right? Like, obviously the Bengals went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and I think a lot of people thought maybe that was just kind of a flash in the pan. They proved last year that it wasn't, and so that's when it happened. That's when the shift happened, and I don't know if there's any shifting back.
That's exactly like kind of my point, like encapsulated, is like the Bills think that like the Chiefs are who they want to be so badly, right? Like the Bills think like they're chasing the Chiefs crown. It's like, dude, you aren't even the Bengals. You know what I mean? Like that's not a shot at the Bengals, but it's like if they like, I mean, Pete, like all the Burrowhead stuff, right? Like if there was if Chiefs fans lose sleep at night over a team, and they don't, I mean, they just won the Super Bowl, obviously, but if there is that team, it's the team in Cincinnati. It's not Buffalo. Like Buffalo, you won at Arrowhead last year, cool. You know what I mean? Like that, the Chiefs aren't worried about seeing you in the playoffs, Bills. Like they're worried about seeing the Bengals.
And I think like the scary thing about being Buffalo right now too is like I think the division is slowly getting better, right?
Right.
Aaron Rodgers is going to be in the division. I think Miami was on the verge of a breakout before a mini collapse last year. But look, Miami was right with Buffalo in that cold game, and that was a very big game at the time. That was pre-DeMar and all that stuff. Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence is all world. Justin Herbert and what he's doing in LA, if he can get over the Brandon Staley situation. If Lamar remains with Baltimore, it's like, are we? And I think that was the key from Jeremy too. It's like, well, they're third. Are they third? Well, they're fourth.
Well, that's like
Are
that's
they
the
fourth. Like,
that's
are we
like,
looking at the fifth best team in the conference?
It's like they're playing like Clash of the Clans, and like the territory they're defending is third place. It's the bronze place part of the
Right.
podium. You know what I'm saying? They're not even like holding teams off for second at this point in time. Like to your point, it's Kansas City and Cincinnati, and then there's a significant gap before Buffalo is there. And my point is like Buffalo has done nothing to challenge that, and like there are other teams who do nothing. Like the Eagles. The Eagles lose these players, and we're like, well, what's going to happen? What's good? Like, what are the Bills going to do? Like the Bills are just running this back. It feels very reminiscent to me of again, because I went through this with the Cowboys, what the Cowboys did last year, and it was a little bit more dramatic, and that they traded away Amari and things like that. But like people love to throw out when they talk about sports the definition of insanity quote, like doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. That's literally what the Bills are doing. Like, why is it going to be different? Like, Josh Allen's going to have more wear and tear on him. Like, Stephon Diggs is not enough on his own. Gabe Davis isn't going to become the Robin you want him to be next year just because you want it to happen. Like, you had to go out and get somebody, and they haven't done that.
I think we're all on the same page when it comes to Buffalo and for all of that teams have in the prove me wrong thing. I mean, this is easy storyline stuff for Buffalo now, where it is going to be a big, all right, Josh Allen, you really want to be among the best? Let's prove it this year, because you have to almost reemerge now that it has been a disappointing ending for 2 years in a row.
Jamie, your second question.
I think let's go with the Jalen Carter stuff, because I feel like the top of the NFL draft is starting to kind of form out, and I think we have certain expectations for how the first 3 or 4 picks will go. But Jalen Carter kind of remains that huge mystery of, he could go as early as 5, he could go as late as, I don't know, 15, 20. Like the amount of things that continue to pile up and you can interpret, I feel like, anything that he does in either direction. So who do you guys think are going to take the quote unquote chance on someone like Jalen Carter in this draft?
Well, I think it's worth noting too here that the latest chapter of the story is some body cam video of him initially not being truthful with police about that situation, and kind of denying that they were racing at the time. And I think that matters to teams, right? In covering Kansas City, which is my frame of reference, that's why I bring them up so much. But in covering Kansas City, I know, and I've heard this from multiple people, and I think it's fine sharing that one of the first things Andy Reid says at training camp is, we have truth between each other. Things are going to happen, but you got to shoot me straight. And so, yes, this body cam thing is just a part of the situation, a very ugly situation, but I think it's significant in the sense of a head coach has to trust a player, especially when he's taking him in the top 10. Hard for me to determine which team. I think just looking at the order is gonna go and take that risk. But I think it's worth noting that it's going to have to be fully vetted. And it's a good thing that the NFL has leaned into some of these things, such as mental health and having doctors in-house, because there's going to have to be like a program surrounding him to just make sure that he gets on the right path. And again, the sad thing about this, of course, the situation, but this should have been, an all-world talent that really took the league by storm. And now there's so many questions, RJ, surrounding him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really well said, Pete. And I think Andy Reid is obviously an example of a coach that has sort of the built-in credit to take a chance on a player, right? To roll the dice on someone. And so I think if we're answering the football part of the question, which is obviously what you asked, Jeremy, I think it takes a coach like Andy Reid, right? Like a coach who's non-questionable, like a coach who, a first-year coach cannot take this risk, obviously. And right now, there's nothing but information to suggest that it's a high risk. And so the team that I feel like has been the most connected to him has been the Seahawks. I mean, and Pete Carroll checks that box, right? Like you have that established, and Pete Carroll's credit as the Seahawks head coach, and from an instinctual perspective is like as high as ever, right? Like based on the events of the last 365 days or so. So I mean, yeah, like if I had to guess, and I don't mean it like lightly, but if I had to put odds on it or whatever, I would guess Seattle is the team. They just kind of check all the boxes to where it would make sense. But to your point, Jeremy, I wouldn't be shocked if he fell. And it's all of the off-field things, and then obviously things didn't go well the last time we saw him work on the field. Like there is a lot of ambiguity right here.
Yeah, and the only thing I really want to add to the conversation, because I agree with everything you just said, I think Seattle makes the most sense. I feel like Pete Carroll's the kind of person that can take on something like that. Although, like, I always find it interesting to kind of have the debate whether is it more important for someone to fall into like a good culture, a good relationship between coach and player, or does that relationship between coach and player exist because they don't take the character risks on guys like Jalen Carter? Like it's a kind of a chicken or the egg situation there. Although, there are certain examples of, maybe quote unquote character concerns landing in Seattle and being just fine. But the other thing I want to just bring up is like, I've seen the body cam footage, and it really strikes me as a, like, you see what you want to see type of thing. And it's always kind of dangerous to overanalyze something in the exact moment of trauma, right? Like I think we do this in an age of maybe like true crime podcasts and stuff. Like we listen to the 911 call and try to figure out, well, I mean, like this is all happening in real time in a moment of trauma. And so you have to be careful and not overanalyze like everything, because I mean, it's just such a complicated situation with emotions, with relationships, with communities and police, and like all that sort of stuff kind of factor in that it's hard for me to do the calculus. And that's why all these teams are going to be doing a lot more research on this guy, whether it means bringing them in or vetting all of his sources.
Well said. Pete, you have your two to get through. So which one do you want to go to first?
Let's go to the NFC North, baby. In a wide open NFC North.
Mickey Mouse division is what people are saying.
Right.
You?
In that.
Are you people?
Welcome to Disney World North. In a wide open NFC North and Conference, what is the Bears and the Lions floor and ceiling next year? Who do we start with? RJ, do you want to weigh in first here?
Well, I'll start because the mail is passing and my dog Bear has not barked yet, so I'm a little bit shocked by that. I mean, the Bears are fun. Like the Bears are, like the Bears have some, I'm sorry, Jeremy, some like NFL history and some like cool city prestige. Like people think of Chicago and like a really like kind of fun, like, no, like
forget about 8 Mile.
Look,
My
goodness. All I'm saying is like the Amazing Race once had a season finale in Chicago. I've never seen them have a season finale in Detroit. That's all I'm saying. Like,
yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you made fun of me for watching wrestling at the beginning.
So, Chicago, like people want Chicago to be good. Like people want to see that happen. Like people want to see that happen. Like, and they have the like NFL history that people want to see. Like they fit the like conventional cliche of like the NFL is better when the Bears are good. Like I don't know that people do say that about the Lions, Jeremy. I could be wrong. So I think people are going to try to will the Bears into existence. I don't think they're there yet. I'm rooting for them. They are a team that I have a soft spot for. I mentioned my dog. I love Matt Eberflus. I've loved him ever since he was a linebackers coach for the Cowboys and the development of Sean Lee. And the pieces are all lining up. I'm so, loving what they've done to this point in the offseason. I can't wait to see like what they turn this draft capital into. I wouldn't put it past them to trade back a couple of times and just keep kind of picking things up and building and building and building. But I think that the Bears floor is probably like 5 wins. And ceiling maybe 10. Like if everything breaks right, I mean, I can't see them, pushing 10 wins. And the Lions, I mean, I think a floor is like 8 wins. I mean, I really do. I don't know how you can't give them that credit, especially with the Bears being, kind of cute, but like not there yet. The Vikings are the Bills, like taking another step back, and they weren't good enough as it was. And that bums us out, Pete. I think the Lions ceiling is winning the Super Bowl. I don't know if you're throwing out ceilings that they're probably going to win that division. And if you're a division winner, your ceiling is winning the Super Bowl because you have a ticket to the tournament. So those are my thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I almost agree completely. I think that the Bears, to me, are really in good hands with Ryan Poles. I've said that before. I think that trade down was smart. This is a team that needs a lot of pieces. I think you're going to start to see the Bears begin to emerge. This is the year before the year for me, and
They're
so
in hibernation. Oh,
yes, there you go. I think the floor for me for Chicago. I'm looking at the NFC standings from last year. 10th was the Packers at 8-9. 11th was the Panthers at 7-10. I think they're right under that tier. So I'm going to say that 13th feels like the floor in the conference for the Bears. I think the ceiling for me is a wild card right now. Right, they may be one of those teams that can sneak in. I think the floor for the Lions is the wild card round, being a wild card. But I tend to agree with RJ. I think they win the division. Certainly, to me, the floor for the Lions is the playoffs. I think they're a playoff team this year, and I think the ceiling is NFC champs. Why not the Detroit Lions? I think they can do that before, of course, losing to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. So I think that's what you're looking at if you're a fan of the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I have much I didn't expect such optimism coming from you guys, especially such a Lions hater like RJ, which I'm just now figuring out that he's a Lions hater.
I hate the people. I hate the mass of it all. Like, we can talk about other things. Like, we don't have to all jump on at the same time. But go ahead.
But I think I mean, you say like the Bears everyone wants the Bears to win. Like, who doesn't want Dan Campbell to win right now? That guy is just like
get that man a beer.
Promo, right? But yeah, like to talk about the Bears, I mean, I'm with you guys. I think they've made a lot of smart moves. I mean, they've had a ton of resources, and they're going to have a ton more in the draft. The trade down was good. I don't love investing in linebackers heavily, which is what they did in free agency, but they added talent, which they needed to do. They have a long ways to go. I think offensively, like I'm a big Justin Fields fan. I think he is going to be a very good quarterback in this league. I still wonder if they've done enough to protect him. I don't think they have. So I think they're still going to kind of continue to struggle on the offensive side of the ball. So I might have their ceiling a little bit lower, but I'm with you guys in saying, like, they feel like they're on the rise. They're just not there yet. The year before the year, maybe 2 years. Like, I'm looking at the Lions rebuild and the Bears rebuild, and it feels like they're either in year one, like a mixture of year 1 and year 2 for the Lions. The Lions are now in year 3. I think these two teams are probably the future of the division, though, which is kind of a fun and exciting thing to talk about because it's always been really the Packers and the Vikings to some degree. As for the Lions, I mean, they were a 9-8 team that just missed out on the playoffs last year. It's hard to look at the roster and see that it's only gotten better. The only pieces that they've lost, Jamal Williams, they replaced with David Montgomery. You lose DJ Chark, but you get it. You gain essentially a Jameson Williams this year. And then you had a bunch of parts to the defense. You got pick 6, you got pick 18. They're in a pretty good spot. And so I can tell you for sure that in Detroit, anyone, if they don't make the playoffs this year, it's going to be a pretty significant disappointment. And people are starting to use that Super Bowl word, which is kind of scary in Detroit because it does feel different because the win totals came out a couple of weeks ago, right? Lions are at 9.5. Everyone else is at either 8.5, 7.5. This is the first time the Lions have had the highest Vegas win total in the division since 1992.
Cowboys won the Super Bowl that year, just so we're clear. So.
Yeah, and
you had that one in the pocket.
And I think we were both 3 or 4 years old. RJ, I think that the Lions to me are ready to emerge. I think this is the springboard year in my opinion, outside looking in. And I think it's a win for America too. I mean, how often are we saying to each other, well, that Thanksgiving meal was pretty filling. The Lions are on. Let's take a little nap here. Now you have to stay awake for that Lions game. Maybe you sleep when the 5 and 7 Cowboys take the field.
I don't know anyone who has already eaten by the time that the Lions play, except for maybe Jeremy, given his line of work on things.
Because they're usually first, right? Do they have to be first? The Lions?
They've literally been first for like 60 years. So thank you for paying attention to the NFL.
I knew Lions and Cowboys play, but I didn't realize there was an order to this thing.
It was their idea. It was the Lions' idea that the Cowboys jumped in on, and so that's why things are what they are. Again, way to know your NFL history. But I agree. I think that the Lions are like an evolving Charmeleon. Like they're right there. You know what I mean? They need like one more attack to like fully become Charizard. Whereas I feel like the Bears are like an evolving Charmander. You know what I mean? They're not quite Charmeleon yet, but they're both ready to evolve to the next level. They're just at different places. Jeremy, I had one final question before we get to Pete's final question. And that's Justin Fields has the chance maybe to become like one of the most hated figures in like Detroit football history, having played at Ohio State and obviously now for the Chicago Bears,
Sure.
the Ohio State, excuse me. Like who is that guy currently? Like if Justin Fields were to become like a thorn in the Lions' side again, for someone like you who roots for the Wolverines and the Lions, that would like doubly piss you off. Like can you name or can you think of somebody that's been before?
Well, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, right? Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre have taken up that spot in the division.
But they didn't have the collegiate history. You know what I mean? Like this would burn you twice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't know if I don't think there's that much turnover because you have to realize Michigan is also split between Michigan and Michigan State fans, and Michigan State fans don't have as, big of a rivalry. But, now that the Lions have a couple Michigan guys, Aiden Hutchinson versus Justin Fields can be kind of a fun little rivalry in the division. But yeah, I think just there is now like a villain role in the NFC North that is unseated because Aaron Rodgers is gone. And so, Justin Fields could be that guy.
Okay. Kirk Cousins, I guess, maybe for some Michigan fans because of the Michigan State thing and now the Vikings thing. So
a little bit.
You got to be good. You got to be good.
Pete, you picked the Vikings to reach the Super Bowl last year, just like I did. So let's back off. Your final question, Pete. We all have one more. We all have one more.
Oh, is
that
it
means
me?
you go.
We're
Missy Elliott thing in this, remember? So
okay. Assuming the Chiefs were to make a 6th straight AFC title game, we kind of already talked about this. Who plays them? Who do we think plays them?
Can I add a qualifier for us?
Sure.
What non-Bengals team plays them? Because I think we would all like kind of agree they have the best odds. So,
yeah. So yeah, that's a good way to put it. What non-Cincinnati team has the best chance of playing the Chiefs if we are assuming they make it again?
I'll go first, and I also want to add that I think we should all have to pick different teams to make things a little bit more fun. That's why I wanted to go first. So I think the Vogue pick will be the Chargers. Miss me with that. Not a big deal. Whatever. Kellen Moore started his career in Detroit. Whatever. Anyway, I think the answer is the Miami Dolphins. If I have to really pick one, if I
Tom Brady and the Miami Dolphins.
We saw them flirt with things, and a lot of this is contingent. Like we all care about Tua's health more than anything. So if that requires not being involved in football, then so be it. But the Dolphins have enough, and the Dolphins are they're like the middle point of Charmanderness. You know what I mean? Like they haven't fully evolved, but they're right there. And the Bills, could we not see the Dolphins winning the division? Like, is that ridiculous to completely and totally think about at this point? It's not. I don't have the DraftKings odds in front of me. It sounds like you have some over/under win totals, Jeremy. Maybe you can help me out. But I could, if I have to pick a non-Bengals team, I'm more willing to believe that the Dolphins kind of catch the lightning in the bottle that they were close to than the Bills keep holding on, and then find a way to push through or whatever. So Keep Holding On is a great song by the Rolling Stones. But I'm going to take the Miami Dolphins.
I'm upset because that was the team I was going to take, honestly, because I really love the addition of Vic Fangio on the defensive side of the ball. I think they're going to be a much better team defensively overall. And if Tua can just kind of return, and I think Mike McCarthy is going to figure something out on the offensive side of the ball, whether it's
Mike McDaniel. I know you love Mike McCarthy.
I'm sorry, I do that a ton. There's too many Mike Micks in this league. But yeah, I like the Dolphins a lot, and now you're going to make me jump to a different team. So, man, it's too early for Pittsburgh, although I think we're sleeping on Pittsburgh. Maybe that's going to be my answer to maybe a future question in a couple
Jeremy,
minutes
what
here.
What the hell, dude? You've ruined
I'm sorry. You have me flustered because you just changed this question.
Kenny Pickett? Whoa. That is a take right there.
Yeah, and I'm with you on the Chargers. I'm not in belief that they are going to take that step. Am I about to throw my support behind the Jaguars? I think I might.
Wow.
That's not ridiculous. I mean,
yeah.
Calvin Ridley.
They were a game away from the title game. I mean, they obviously lost to the Chiefs, but there's conventional wisdom behind that.
Yeah, and they finished the season strong, even not even including the playoffs. And you got a young quarterback and a lot of free agent additions in the past 2 years that are just kind of blossoming all together. I think it could work.
Yeah, I like the Jaguars. I was thinking about maybe the Jaguars, but neither of you picked my answer, which of course is the New York Jets. I think the Jets, we throw around quarterback away a lot in the NFL when we're talking hypothetically, but the Jets, man, they are the definition of a quarterback away with, I think, how young and good that defense is. You look at their quarterback situation from last year. Zach Wilson, 9 games. Mike White, 4 games. Joe Flacco, 4 games. 7-10 finish, right? And they were flirting with the playoffs for most of the year. We heard about the whole receipts thing. Even if Aaron Rodgers is, let's be generous and say like 75% of prime Aaron Rodgers. I think this is a spicy playoff team. I think the Buffalo Bills are vulnerable in that division. I think they could win the division, and if they're able to pull that off, I think suddenly, you're a couple games away from heading to Kansas City to play the Chiefs in what would be obviously RJ and Jeremy. You know how New Yorkers are, an annoying Jets run to the AFC title game. So with reluctance, I think the New York Jets to me are the best non-Cincinnati bet to make it all the way through.
The Jets 7 wins last year against the Deshaun Watless Cleveland Browns, against the Steelers, who with Kenny Pickett, who you just hated on, Pete. The Miami Dolphins, fine. In Green Bay against the washed Aaron Rodgers, who's not supposed to resuscitate them. Against the Broncos, who obviously were a disaster. Against the Bills, who were some frauds, as we've identified. And against the Bears. I mean, like, what, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not like the general, like, disposition behind this is like, well, the defense is going to be amazing. Like, Pete, you know this, like a year ago, it's like the Cowboys defense is going to crater in 2022, like regression to the mean, regression to the mean, regression to the mean. They were the like exception, which is part of what has me concerned for 2023. Like, why do we expect this? Why do we expect the thing that always regresses to the mean to like not regress to the mean here when it comes to the Jets? And Aaron Rodgers to come in and just save everything. Like, I think, like, give me the under on all the Jet stuff, including what you just picked.
Yeah, it does have all the makings of an implosion, honestly. Like, this whole offseason just created to curate Aaron Rodgers when it didn't work in Green Bay doing it that way. I mean, really, for the last couple of years, they haven't been the behemoth that I think a lot of people think that the Packers have been for a while.
Counterpoint. Have you ever seen somebody come out of a darkness retreat and not make the AFC title game?
You know what I really hate about this is like we've ruined the darkness retreat stuff. Like we don't have to make the jokes about it anymore. Like it was the first 5,000 were funny. You know what I mean?
Like I'm just asking a question.
No, but it's like
yes, it's no.
It's like the Dan Campbell thing. Like we don't always have to go to the biting the kneecaps thing. Like like we're all capable of like evolving thought. Like we can have
salt and pepper with those kneecaps.
So anyway, Jeremy, your final question.
Yeah, let me pull it up so that I remember it. What will the Cardinals do with the number 3 overall pick? Obviously, I think we all assume the first 2 are going to be quarterback picks. That leaves the Cardinals to potentially trade down or stay there and take maybe the best defensive player or do something that we don't expect them to do. I'll throw it to you first, RJ, because I want to put you on the spot.
I am always terrified of being where the Cardinals are as a franchise. Like there's a difference between being bad and being totally lost. Like the Cardinals are directionless. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing that like is an anchor in the ground for them. That they are just floating in the abyss. They are Mark Wahlberg and I forget who else. I think was it George Clooney in The Perfect Storm. Like they are just floating out there waiting for anything, even something bad to happen, like something to capsize them in one way or another. And normally this is like a great swing point in the draft, right? Like, especially with as predictable as the first 2 picks seem to be, like you put in the notes, Jeremy, like the draft starts at 3, like, okay, you should be able to dance. Like you should be able to move around here. But I don't know like who the desperate team is that like really needs that quarterback. Like it would have been the Texans, I suppose. It might have been the Jets, but if this Aaron Rodgers thing goes through, like I think they're just going to take the best available non-quarterback and convince themselves that it was the best route. But I think it's a combination of like the environment not necessarily cultivating a great return on that pick, them being in a weird spot. I mean, it will be the best available non-quarterback. If I had to cast a net, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'll take it a step further. And as you look at the draft picks that they have, I just pulled them up. They have 8 picks. So they have the first rounder, the second rounder, 2 3s, a 4, a 5, and 2 6s, which is a pretty good amount of picks. And especially in that meaty part of day 2 where they have a lot of selections. And I think sometimes when you look at teams that need to do a lot, you're looking for a trade down. But I think they have enough picks where they're able to take a few stabs at trying to have a really good class and make it better. So I think they keep the pick and they go with the best defensive player. We just talked about a little bit earlier the questions with Carter. Maybe it's a mistake not overlooking those. Maybe he ends up being a great 10-year Pro Bowler, but it's probably going to be Will Anderson, I would guess, the edge at Alabama. And I think because, they can't really take a chance and go quarterback. Kyler Murray has enough issues keeping his head on straight when he's the only guy in the room. And I think you got to give him another opportunity to see if he can get back to what seemed like that breakout form. And when you're going for positions that could really change the game for you, on one side of the football, edge is one of those positions. There's only a few of those positions in football, especially non-quarterback positions. And I think that's the direction they go. And sure, is it safe in a way? I think so, but it could be very impactful. And I think they have 7 more picks to try to continue to turn this thing around.
Yeah, I think they'd still like to obviously have more high round picks, right? If they only got 1 first, 1 second, maybe you're adding 1 or 2 or 3 starters most. I think you're looking to add another high level pick. And so I think trade down is obviously what they want to do the most. But to expand on RJ's point, it's not just that there might be fewer and fewer teams that are looking to trade up. I'm not sure the prospects are necessarily worth trading up for.
Right.
I think Anthony Richardson is probably the one guy that is the wild card in this draft, where I think he's got an incredible ceiling. Like, he could be an elite dude, a guy that we're talking up with the top of the guys. But with the production in 1 year at Florida not so great, that is an enormous risk. And not only drafting him in the first round in the top 5, but trading up to do so can be one of those things that really, that gets your general manager fired, right? If that doesn't work out, it's a huge risk. Will Anderson is maybe a guy that you trade up for, but again, Arizona might be just better served taking him. Will Levis is a guy who I feel like his stock is plummeting, whether that's an accurate reflection of what people are thinking or just, people getting high on everybody else. I'm not sure, but to me, I think I'm with you guys. Like, I think they're just going to kind of sit here. I think they want to trade down. I don't know if they're going to get that opportunity, but I think they'll probably wait until draft night to make that decision because they really want to kind of put the pressure on these teams that might want a quarterback.
Very strange times for the Cardinals. I did want to throw in, Pete mentioned, what did you say about Kyler Murray's head? Like when it's on a swivel or something like that? I don't know what it was, but that was going to be my segue. Have you guys seen the chatter about the Cardinals changing uniforms this season? This offseason, rather? There's a lot of chatter on the Cardinals subreddit, like the one for Cardinals fans, that like they're going to be unveiling some sort of new uniform and that there's going to be a new helmet. Now, they did debut the black, like glossy helmet last year as an alternative one. But apparently, again, this is according to the Cardinals subreddit, it will have some sort of like silvery stripe, the new Cardinals helmet. So Kyler Murray's head allegedly will at least look different when he returns to the NFL for the Cardinals, presumably. Okay. Good question. See, like the Cardinals you would think would be in like this position of like such interest, but it's like, it's the Cardinals. Like nobody really cares. So, okay. Last one from me, and then Rachel will cap us off. Jeremy ruined it. What team is hiding in plain sight right now? Now, the inspiration for this was the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think we give the Steelers enough credit, or haven't, over the last couple of years. Mike Tomlin did it again, finished above 500. I don't know that I believe they could, play the Chiefs in the AFC title game, to your point, Pete, but like, I do think they're the team that is going to be in the playoffs that we're not talking about. Like, the likelihood of playoff appearance ratio to like national discussion is the most off for them. So like, who are other teams in that box for you both? You cannot answer the Pittsburgh Steelers because Jeremy ruined that. So that means, Jeremy, you have to go first. A non-Steelers team.
You keep pulling my answers off the board right before you throw it to me. How dare you? Carolina Panthers are maybe my answer. And I feel like I was on this show maybe 2 months ago saying like, I'm not sure about the hire and I'm not sure about their ability. I do kind of like what they're building. And obviously we're talking rookie quarterback here, right? So their ceiling is certainly capped. They're not going to win a Super Bowl. But they're a team that were 7-10 last year. They beat some good teams on that schedule as well. And I don't like, they took down the Seahawks, they took down the Lions. And they're in a vulnerable division. Like I think for some reason there's this odd support for the New Orleans Saints, and I just don't see it.
Right.
Like they've got crazy odds to win, I think, that division and even contend for a Super Bowl. I think the Panthers might be my favorite to win that division. So they're the team that I think too many people are sleeping on right now.
Pedro.
I'm going to go back to a team that you mentioned earlier, Jeremy. It's the Jaguars. They snuck into the playoffs, and I think people consider them spicy to an extent, but I don't think anyone gives them enough credit in the sense of, man, this is actually a team when you consider their schedule and their division and what they have at quarterback now and wide receiver, and the defense was pretty good last year, where they could finish the top of the conference. They just had the, when you're playing the Titans, the Colts, and the Texans, if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence is playing the way that he was last year, that should be 6-0. If you are able to pull that off, or even 5-1, man, that is such a significant advantage when you're going against three divisions that are presumably going to be better, than they were last year, right? We talked about the AFC East. We know the AFC North has been competitive. The AFC West, it has to be better than last year. I'd imagine they still were able to get 2 playoff teams in, even with the slow start for the Chargers. But I got to imagine the Raiders will be safer with Garoppolo. We did, and I know no one likes to talk about this, for now, those final 2 games after the coaching change, Russell Wilson finally started to look a little better in Denver. We'll see what Sean Payton can do. But the story here is that those divisions are just more competitive. And when you have in my opinion, someone veering and beginning to break out as a top 5 quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, like I said, hiding in plain sight. No, they're not necessarily hiding in plain sight when it comes to being a playoff team, but I think they're not going to get enough credit when it comes to being the next Bengals, rivaling the Chiefs and somehow maybe finding a way to upset them in the playoffs, that kind of thing.
I think those are both really good answers. The Panthers is contingent upon, obviously, like, whether it's Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or whatever, like providing the boost that we sometimes see from number 1 overall picks. Rookie Cam Newton, I don't think they were a playoff team, but I remember he was like a fantasy darling that year in 2011. So like, if you got that kind of thing, like, I think that's a big win. I think the Jaguars are a great answer, Pete. Obviously the playoff, it was an electrifying playoff comeback that we just kind of like forgot about, and more specifically on the Chargers end. Like, the Chargers had this like just complete, total, absolute collapse of a playoff loss. It's like, okay, cool. They're the Chargers. They got a new offensive coordinator though. Watch out! Like, here they come. Whatever. I was actually going to answer the Denver Broncos. Pete, you touched on it. Like, on the under the premise of regression to the mean. Like, it just was like historically bad, like different universe bad. And if there is slight regression from the Chiefs, not that the AFC West is in any jeopardy, but like, if there's a game difference, whatever, if there is regression coming for the Chargers, the Raiders are a huge mess. I mean, like, there's reason to believe, I think the Broncos, could get it together. My answer, though, since you kind of ruined that, you both are just ruining everything today, is the New York Giants. I mean, I don't think that we're so focused on at least I am, on what the Cowboys have done this offseason. The Eagles get a lot of natural attention. The Commanders obviously have the attention of the ownership sale. The Giants very quietly traded for Darren Waller. The Giants also locked down Daniel Jones. They returned Saquon Barkley, even if it's on the franchise tag.
Dimes Stan, RJ Ochoa.
Like, they have the returning coach of the year. Like, what reason is there to believe they won a playoff game last year? You know what I mean? Like, what reason is there to believe that the Giants aren't, in the mix? I've said this before a lot at BTB and on the NFC's mixtape. I think 3 of the 4 best teams in the NFC right now are in the NFC East. They're the Eagles, Cowboys, and Giants. I think the 4th best team is the Niners. I don't know if you would agree, Jeremy, from an NFC perspective. The Lions certainly flirting with that, maybe be number 5 right now. But the Giants, nobody wants to give them their love, even though they've kind of earned it. And now it's like, oh, Aaron Judge hit a home run, his first at bat. It's like, dude, the Giants got Darren Waller. Give him some love. Like, talk about him on WFAN once in a while. So that's my take.
I feel like the air got sucked out of the balloon a little bit towards the end of the season for them.
Big Blue View.
They were what 2-4, 2-5-1, I think, to end the season, and then obviously they beat up an overrated Vikings team. So I think they still have a little bit ways to climb. Lions handled them pretty easily in New York, but New Jersey.
That's right. East Rutherford. Yeah.
That's right. So I if we're stacking the NFC, I'd probably put the Lions above them, but like same tier probably.
Yeah,
the Giants, they did start 7-2 and finished 9-7-1. That isn't exactly a great finish.
The Jets were 7-3 and finished on like a 5-game losing streak, and you have them in the freaking title game, Pete. So I mean, let's just calm down a little bit here.
Well, that's after they're trading the three-headed stinky monster at quarterback for a former MVP.
I'm gonna ask a silly question. It will sound silly. Jeremy, who would you rather have today? You can trade Jared Goff straight up for Aaron Rodgers or Daniel Jones.
I have to. I might rather have Jared Goff.
Okay, but like, if you have to trade him for one of them.
No, I'd still Aaron Rodgers for 1 year.
I think they're very comparable, though. I mean, in terms of who they are players today, in terms of Football Outsiders, DYAR, Aaron Rodgers 16th, Daniel Jones 18th. In terms of just YAR, Aaron Rodgers 15th, Daniel Jones 17th. In terms of individual quarterback DVOA, Daniel Jones 20th, Aaron Rodgers 21st. This feels very similar to me last year, people being like, Matt Ryan is a definite upgrade over Carson Wentz in Indianapolis. Like, I think that Daniel Jones and Aaron Rodgers are similar players at this point in time.
Can't get through the podcast without getting at the Colts again. We know that. We know that that's going to happen.
Rachel, would you please join us and ask your question to give us a neat 10 for the titling of the podcast episode? Because 9 doesn't sound as good. 10 gets us to double digits. So, Rachel, what is the question that you have at this point in the offseason?
Okay, I want to first off tell you guys, excellent job. This has been one of my favorite activities you guys have done so far. So all of your questions were A1. But I want to take a look at, I know, great job. I want to take a look at Odell Beckham Jr. About to be 30 years old this year. He missed the entire 2022 season with his ACL injury, and it originally had came out that he was looking for a deal worth $20 million per year. A few days ago, it came out that now he's looking for maybe $15 million per season. And so I was looking at over the cap, and of course, like Tyreek Hill, highest paid wide receiver right now, but looking at other wide receivers that are in that same like 15 mil range, there were players like, where was it at? Cortland Sutton, Allen Robinson, and Hunter Renfrow. And so my question was, what dollar amount will be enough for Odell Beckham Jr. and like which team do you think will most likely get that deal done with him?
I'll go first. I think that the fact that Odell is, look, my team was connected to Odell, so like I was super in on it. I think Pete, you can speak to that as well, but I think that maybe, I don't want to say Odell or his people like overplayed the situation, but I think that the NFL was like, we would just rather go other directions. I mean, the Cowboys traded for Brandon Cooks. They have him for 2 years at $20 million. So I think the match left, like everyone has kind of found a dancing partner, right? Like the Odell is kind of like the wallflower at this point in time. And the only team who has yet to really add somebody is the team that I hated on a little while ago in the Buffalo Bills. So I would not be shocked if Odell goes to the Bills. That's a juicy enough team to generate all the headlines and Odell and Josh Allen, and he's going to make some sort of crazy training camp catch, blah, blah, blah. 1 year, $15 million, I think is enough, like a mercenary sort of deal. And it can be billed as like he can hit the open market again next year. The Bills can get a comp pick if he walks, blah, blah, blah. That's my prediction.
This is a tough one for me because I
remember that, Rachel, when it comes to MFWP, that I stepped up right away.
That's right.
And
well, you've been covering it. You've been covering the Odell. I have a more full team that doesn't really necessarily need to add that. We got a Jameson Williams already. But
JMO,
it's $15 million a year sounds crazy to me.
It does.
Once you hit that kind of 30-year mark as a wide receiver, like, it's downhill quick, and you're coming off an injury that you didn't even play all year. Who knows what you're getting in this sort of guy? So this to me, like it seems like a reckless. If he gets upwards of 15 million, I feel like this is a reckless signing. So I have to pick a team that I think is willing to do something reckless. And admittedly, I don't know their cap situation that well, but we talked about the erraticism of Jim Irsay, so I'm going to throw it to the Colts.
I think that's interesting. I don't think Odell's going to want to play for the Colts.
Probably
given
not.
Their situation. One of the smaller things to come out of the NFL owner meetings was a paparazzi shot that I believe it was one of the Patriots writers caught Odell and Robert Saleh embracing for a hug. And I think the NFL largely has agreed, look, we ain't giving this guy 15 mil a year. We're just not going to do it. We're not doing it. I think eventually Odell will come down. To me, this feels like 8 million guaranteed, 12 with incentives that he can get to, so long as he stays in the field. I think that's a humbling thing that Odell's going to have to deal with. But I think, you know what? I can eat a little bit of money for 1 year to play with Aaron freaking Rodgers and come to Arrowhead in January to play for the AFC title. So Odell Beckham Jr. to the New York Jets, 8 million to up to 12 million in incentives.
Cool. Thanks for answering my question, guys. Okay. And today's MF double MVP, I want to hit on all the points first. Pete, I love your point that you talked about like the Lions and how they're no longer like that garage band. I thought that was
That's right. Yep. Good comparison. I know.
That was really good. Jeremy, I loved your point. I didn't like the Pittsburgh point that you made. I didn't agree with that. I thought the Jaguars, that was like a spicy take. So I'm here for when you were just talking about I guess like other AFC teams that would play against the Chiefs next season in the title game. RJ, I really like the question that you presented about like the villain role when it came to like Justin Fields. That was really good, just like being a thorn in the lion's side. I like that one. I also really liked how you touched on like a first year head coach that just can't take a player like Jalen Carter. Like you can't see a first year coach doing that. Maybe somebody like a Pete Carroll. That was a really good point. And I also loved your question. My favorite question out of all of them today was like the surprise player that gets dealt, because I think that that's something we're all going to be looking for. So I thought like the T. Higgins and Derrick Henry were really, really good picks. And so today I'm going to give it to RJ.
Let's go. Wow. That's back to back. What a phenomenal performance by me. Shout out to me. And congratulations to me. Pete, Jeremy, which one of you wants to bow first? It's okay.
I'm good.
Jeremy, you look like you're taking the loss, at least like humbly and well. Pete, you look devastated.
He looks like Urban Meyer eating some pizza.
Yeah,
in the tunnel.
I just feel like I left it all out on the air this morning, and I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed in Rachel.
Well, even you're like one of the best things you did was the garage band thing. I made that better when I said that it was actually like the Warped Tour thing. Like, you know what I mean? So like, look, you got some assists in this game. I dunked, you know what I mean? So like I get up, put on the posters. You have some things in the stat sheet. It's okay. We were both on the team. We both got the win. That's what matters. Like as a whole, Monday Football Monday. So good team win. Yep. Yeah, think about it. You're Dwayne Wade in the picture, like doing the arms out, and I'm LeBron, like hanging in the air. You know what I mean? Like that's who we are in this situation. I guess Jeremy, that makes you Chris Bosch, and Rachel, you can be Eric Spoelstra, or
Pat Riley,
or Mario Chalmers, whatever you want.
Rachel's Pat Riley.
Yes,
this is the brains behind the operation.
At least you came up with one good analogy. It was after I won, but it is what it is. Wow, phenomenal episode, phenomenal performance all the way around. Except for Jeremy stealing I fought through that too, Rachel. You saw the notes. Jeremy was constantly like taking all my like future questions.
You didn't mention anything about the Steelers in the breakdown. All right,
no,
it was understood. When I wrote the question, that was who I had in mind. You should have sensed that. So that's all I'm saying. Wow. As we get out of here, Jeremy, I have a proposition for you that I would like Pete and Rachel to serve as witnesses for. The Astros and Tigers are about to play a series, as mentioned at the top of this episode. I think the team the person whose team loses the series has to eat something.
I hate to throw myself behind the Tigers, but I'm just here for the content. So
what should we have to eat, Rachel and Pete? The person whose team loses the series that starts today. Something that's practical that we can, get in life. I don't want to hear like something on Fear Factor or something like that.
I think Jeremy picks something that is popular in Detroit, and if Jeremy loses, he has to eat something from the Houston, Texas area.
Okay. If the Tigers lose the series, Jeremy, you have to eat like a full plate of tacos. I want to make this something enjoyable for you. You know what I'm saying? Like a normal meal, not enough that it would have you feeling like bloated or something like that. Like a normal. You have to go somewhere, get some sort of Tex-Mex tacos, and throw that down in celebration of the Astros.
Totally fine, and I would say Detroit style pizza. If you can find a place with Detroit style pizza, hopefully not Little Caesars, but if it has to be Little Caesars, go with Little Caesars.
And you can get Crazy Bread if you want.
Did you guys see that Pizza Hut, this is not an ad, brought back the March Madness basketballs?
I love it.
That they used to have when we were kids. Do you remember that? Like when you would buy like, I don't know what it was, but you would get like, it was like a specific basketball that you would get, and they brought it back this year. So Rachel, you might be a little young for that. You might have missed it.
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, they were really cool. Like, and
pardon the age discrimination.
I saw it on Instagram that they brought back I don't know what you have to buy. Like if it's a deep dish pizza, then maybe I'm kind of rooting for the Tigers. You know what I mean? So that I get the pizza and the ball. But it is what it is. Okay, as we leave, Pete, sing us a song.
Sing us a song, you're the piano man. Sing us a song tonight. Well, we're all in the mood for a melody, and you've got us feeling all right.